Well, it's Saturday night, so let's talk movies. And tonight, I want to kick off a new series of videos, which is Patrick Recommends Movies. And I'm not just going to throw a title at you and say go watch it. I'm going to tell you why I liked it and why you might want to consider watching it. And you'll get to know me a little bit better because you'll see the kind of movies that I like to watch. And I want to also break this series of videos up in different topics. So, whereas some nights might be Western movies or classic movies or whatever, tonight I want to strictly talk about hard to find movies or cuts of movies that you may not know about. So, however, when I say hard to find, that doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to find these. Generally, all of these you can find on the internet. Just Google it, and somewhere you can order this. So the first movie I'd like to show you is called No Down Payment, and this movie was made in 1957. It stars Joanne Woodward, who is the wife of Paul Newman. It stars Tony Randall, Cameron Mitchell, Barbara Rush, Sherry North, Jeffrey Hunter, who was in Star Trek, Patricia Owens, and Pat Hingle. You might remember him from Batman, the 1989 movie. Cameron Mitchell has been in lots of things. He's a famous tough guy character actor. He's sort of the antagonist in this movie. Tony Randall is probably best known for The Odd Couple. Um, and this movie, the reason I recommend it is because this is a movie about the post World War II suburban sprawl. It talks about the people who left the military, got married, and moved into these ready made, clapped together suburban communities and the crazy drama that followed. This is a shocking movie for 1957. It has topics and occurrences that you may be surprised to see. Uh, and it deals with some very adult subject matter about marriage, domestic life, fidelity, and so forth. It's a very stark depiction of a lifestyle that people were thrust into basically with the Great Depression, World War II, and then boom, suburban 1950s uh, lifestyle. So, this, if you're interested in the 50s, if you want to see a snapshot of 1950s culture made at the time, check out this movie. So that's my first recommendation. No Down Payment, 1957. This is a must watch. Okay. This you may have heard of or you may not. It depends on how much you follow Marvel movies. But this is X-Men Days of Future Past, the Rogue Cut. And as you can see, Rogue is prominently on the cover. And if you watch Days of Future Past in the theater, you're like, I only saw her for a split second in that movie. Well, not in this version. This is the version that I have no idea why this was not the theatrical version, because this is so much better. It has a lot more story development. It has a lot more action, and it has a pivotal part for Rogue, who, I mean, I don't even remember how it was done without her at this point. But she, and I don't want to spoil anything, but she has a very important part in this movie. There's also a lot more of the relationship between Beast and Mystique fleshed out. Um, just this is the X-Men Days of Future Past that we should have gotten instead of the one we did get. This is fairly easy to find. Um, so Cerebral app. I don't even know what that is. I'll have to check that out. I got this on Blu-ray, and there's also a DVD. So I believe this is a DVD and a Blu-ray. No, it's both Blu-ray. One's just special features. Never mind. Okay. And I think there's a digital one on here too that I haven't done yet. But so if you're a Marvel fan like I am, And if you thought the X-Men movies could be improved a little bit, this is the improvement you were wanting right here. Okay, and we're still on that same topic of improved cuts. Let's talk about the most improved DC movie. And I'm not talking about Batman v Superman, the R-rated version, which I'm a fan of too, but I'm talking about Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. As originally conceived and intended, the version you've never seen. Now, if you are familiar with Superman 2, this is a completely different movie. There's some things about this movie that make it very special. Most notably, Marlon Brando's in it. He was completely omitted from the theatrical version of Superman 2. The story flows much differently, and it's much less cheesy, much less cartoony than the theatrical version. This is a much more serious movie. This is just a much better movie. They took elements of the theatrical, added in never before seen scenes into it, and then I'm not sure how they achieved the difference, but they have created an absolutely fantastic version of Superman 2. This is the only one I watch now. I have the other version, but this is the one, to me, that is real Superman 2. So, I recommend that movie. The next movie I want to tell you about is called Stalingrad. This is a German movie. It is in German with English subtitles if you choose to have them. This is like the title says, this movie is about the Battle of Stalingrad. It is a very dark, very gritty war movie made from the perspective of a platoon of German soldiers as they start on R&R in Italy, and then they are sent to the Eastern Front to fight towards Stalingrad. This movie is full of drama and horror, and it's not. Some people have made comparisons to Saving Private Ryan, but I think these are entirely different movies. Whereas Saving Private Ryan is almost like a happy movie compared to this. This movie is just stunning in the depiction of a kind of a feudal battle, and it also progresses from showing this strong German invasion force and how it dwindles down, and it's just picked off until finally the survivors are trying to get out of there, and there's one plane left, and it's in the snow, and they're trying to disguise themselves as wounded soldiers so they can get on that plane, and that was it. That was the last plane, and they're stuck there, and you just feel their frustration and their just the resignation of how this has all gone so wrong. If you want a dark, dramatic movie that tells a story in history that is full of great performances, that has excellent music, that has great details, this is the movie you should watch. If you want to understand a chapter of World War II that's not talked about very much, at least not in America, watch this movie. So, I recommend Stalingrad. Oh, that coffee's good. I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I don't know of much better than in the evening after a long day of work and just sipping some coffee, just and telling you about something I like. That's just one of the happiest feelings I have. So, next movie I want to show you, I'll be really surprised if you've heard of this one. It's called Hit the Dutchman. Once again, you can find all of these movies to buy on the internet. You might just have to Google it. But this one, as you can see, I believe came from Korea. It's Gary's Trading Company is who distributed it. And this movie is about Dutch Schultz, the gangster during Prohibition. It was made in the early 90s. It doesn't it doesn't have a huge, well known cast. It has a lot of unknowns in it, but it tells a thrilling story. It is action packed. It's a little bit cheesy. It's not exactly historically accurate, but I would say it's probably more accurate than Billy Bathgate, which is one of the only other Dutch Schultz themed movies. The only other one I can think of is The Cotton Club. If you're curious about Dutch Schultz, um, like I said, there's not very many movies you can watch. There's The Cotton Club. James Remar played him. There's Billy Bathgate, where Dustin Hoffman played him. And I'm sorry, but Dustin Hoffman was way too old to be playing a gangster who hadn't even reached 30 years yet. And then there's Hit the Dutchman. I don't know of any other Dutch Schultz movies. Well, there was two movies by this company with all of these same actors. There was Hit the Dutchman, and then there was Mad Dog Cole. I don't have Mad Dog Cole, but I want to get it. It's the companion movie to this, and has all the same actors, but it tells the story of Mad Dog Cole, who was one of Dutch Schultz's associates, who's also featured in this movie. The same actors. So this is Dutch Schultz fighting against Luciano and Thomas Dewey and the establishment, and trying to become rich and successful as a gangster. It's like I said, it's a little bit cheesy, but it is action packed. It's exciting. It's different. I think when this movie came out, it was kind of an answer to the movie Mobsters, which was a popular movie about young gangsters during Prohibition. But it's still, I think it holds its own really well. And amazingly, this is a movie that it is hard to find, so get yourself a copy of it if you like movies about gangsters and Prohibition, and sit down and watch it and tell me what you think. Okay, now we're still talking about Prohibition, so this is another movie that I'll be surprised if you've heard of. It's called The Lindbergh Kidnapping Case, and it is exactly about that case. And as you can see, it stars a young Anthony Hopkins as Bruno Hauptmann, the suspect in the Lindbergh kidnapping case. This is a docudrama in the pure sense. This movie follows the details of the case to a T, and as you're watching it, I mean, it's almost like someone's reading a history book to you. It's the actors, particularly what is this actor's name? Clifty Young. He looks so much like Charles Lindbergh, and strangely, Anthony Hopkins looks so much like Bruno Hauptmann. It tells the story from beginning to end, and the details. I mean, it takes a historian to find the things wrong with it. I mean, there were some errors. The house was not correct, but other than that, this was really, really good, and it captures that feel, that 1930s feel. When this case was the crime of the century, as they called it. So, yeah, I recommend this movie. I really do. If you want a history movie, this is one I would recommend. Okay, now we're still talking about movies that you may not have heard of, and I'm going to throw this one at you. This is called Bone Tomahawk, and I was going to save it for my Western recommendations, but this one is so, I keep running into people who've never seen this, so I want to tell everyone to watch it. This is Kurt Russell at his best, Patrick Wilson at his best, Matthew Fox at his best, Richard Jenkins at his all-time best. This is a story of a Western town that is somewhat invaded by a tribe of very, very vicious individuals, and it takes elements of, for example, the Aztec throat whistle, and some I mean, it's a horror movie basically, but it tries to tie in some elements of history and reality, which only succeeds in making the movie much scarier. Uh, it's also got a wicked sense of humor, especially by Richard Jenkins. He's superb in this movie. I mean, he's funny, he's great. Kurt Russell's great. The main protagonist is Patrick Wilson. You might know him from lots of things. Just a very underrated actor. Um, I mean, I can't recommend this one enough. I want to warn you, it's extremely violent. It's one of the most shockingly violent movies I've ever seen. So keep that in mind before you watch it. That this is, not one for the kids. It's extremely violent. But if you like westerns, if you like horror, these two movies meet perfectly. So another thing I want to recommend is something I'm sure you've heard of, but did you know that there were four versions of it? Well, this is Blade Runner, all of the cuts, the 4-disc collector's edition, but the final cut is the one that most people agrees is the best version. This is basically, there was a lot of trouble making this movie the way Ridley Scott had originally wanted to make it, and the studios kept forcing him to tag on happy endings or bad voiceovers and so forth. So this movie is the quintessential version of Blade Runner. This is the version that Ridley Scott wanted to make. It's a little more violent, it's a little more dark, and it also, I think my disc is actually still out. And it also hints at a secret that is really touched upon in the sequel to Blade Runner with Ryan. Was it Ryan Gosling? Not Ryan Gosling. Or is it? Yeah. The new Blade Runner 2049. So, but I wasn't a huge fan of the sequel. I didn't think it was terrible. I thought it was quite slow. I appreciated it, and it was great to see Harrison Ford back as Deckard, but I don't really think anything can top the original. Just the atmosphere, the story, this sort of shocking violence, the things that make you think too about concepts like humanity and things that they're tackling in shows now like Westworld. As a matter of fact, if you're a Westworld fan and if you haven't watched Blade Runner, you've got to watch it because it's tackling the same ethical dilemmas that Westworld is tackling. So, what is what is life? When does an object end and life begin? That's the issue in Blade Runner. So, how many movies is that? Do we have time for one more? Okay, let's do one more movie. Maybe you've heard of this. A lot of people have heard of it, but I can't plug this movie enough. This is my Blu-ray copy of Tommy Wiseau's The Room. If you haven't watched it, just go out and watch this movie. I'm a huge Tommy Wiseau fan. I've met Tommy Wiseau. I've met Greg Sestero. I can't tell you how much fun this movie is to watch. Whether you watch it at home or if you watch it in a theater with other fans, this movie is absolutely a treat. You've heard that it's the Citizen Kane of bad films. This is it. This is the gold standard for so bad they're good. It doesn't get any better than this movie right here. And why is it so bad it's good? It's because he made it with sincerity. He made it with commitment and earnestness, and he was trying to tell an earnest, sincere story about love and friendship and betrayal, and it just was executed so badly. There was a movie with James Franco called The Disaster Artist. Sure, watch it, but nothing tops just watching the original Room. And I mean, The Disaster Artist was a lot of fun to watch. I read the book, cover to cover. The book is great. I mean, to understand how this was made, but do yourself a favor. If you are having a bad day, if work is just stressing you out, find this movie, take it home, and watch it, and you will laugh like you've never laughed before if you haven't seen this yet. So that's my movie recommendations for tonight, and I will be doing more of these if you like it. And I hope I gave you a couple ideas for something to watch. Maybe you've seen all of these, but I hope this was something that helps you pick out something if you're just stuck on tiresome shows or binge watching or whatever and you need a change. I hope this helped. So, until next time, bye.